We're answering your questions in part one of our mailbag opening day lineups. Byron, Buxton, starting pitching acquisitions, untouchable prospects, all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Minnesota Twins podcast. Today is Sunday. It's Sunday night, March 27th, 2022. I'm your gracious host, Nash Walker. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online is where the game starts. Again, this is Nash Walker. I've been writing at Twins Daily for over 2 years, hosting this podcast for over 2 years, going on 3 later this year. Cannot wait to pass that mark. Bringing you daily podcasts on the Minnesota Twins, coming up on 560, 70, 80, 600 episodes soon. Super exciting. I'm answering your questions today. So many great questions. Most questions in a mailbag ever. So we're going to split this into 2 parts. We have part 1 today. We have part 2 on Wednesday. Tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about the Twins starting pitching plans, why they are doing what they're doing, and some of the questions here pertain to that, and I will delegate to tomorrow's episode as well. So just keep that in mind about what I think the plan is here for the rotation in the bullpen. But let's get to these questions. We're going to jump right in. Brandon Warren, the best 2 hosts in Locked On Twins history, me and B. And I don't know Brandon's partner's name. I can't remember. But Brandon got me this position, him and Jeff Ellis. So he's the GOAT. You're the best, Brandon. Norman, who is most likely to be traded for starting pitching? I've always said it's the glut at third base. There is a glut at third base in my mind. Now, some of these guys can play more than just third base. Jose Moreno can play second, play first. Royce Lewis hopefully can play short, maybe the outfield. Austin Martin, hopefully those 2 places as well. Gio Urshela can play more than just third. Luis Arraez can play more than just third. But to me, it's someone out of that group. Miranda, Lewis, Martin, Urshela, Arraez, to me, someone out of that group is the headliner, you could say, in a potential starting pitching deal. Also, the higher upside young guys like Chase Petty was before they traded him. That'd be Keone Cavaco, Aaron Sabato, Mimizi Urbina. Although all 3 of those guys are coming off not so great years, but I would say not the pitching prospects at the higher end, or Trevor Larnach or Alex Kirilloff. I would say that they're the next tier most likely to be moved. I think it's that group: Miranda, Lewis, Martin, Urshela, Arraez. Twins updates. How do you see Devin Smeltzer being used this year? Looked really good today, and I think Smeltzer underrated a little bit considering his stuff. I think he's a battler. I think he can get outs, and like he was today, longer stint relief in the right matchups against lefties. I wouldn't use him against the White Sox righty heavy lineup or the Yankees, but in certain spots, I would definitely see Devin Smeltzer coming out in long relief for starting some games. Sherry says, who is the opening day starter, Sonny Gray or Joe Ryan? I think it's Sonny Gray, but I would not be shocked, Sherry. Love you, Sherry. Wouldn't be shocked if it was someone else. If that's Ryan Ober or someone they acquire in a trade, because Sonny Gray, it seems, is still ramping up at this point in spring training. And that brings us to our next question from Alan. Where is Sonny Gray? Sonny Gray is throwing in a minor league game tomorrow. That tracks him for his first spring training start on April 2nd. That would be the 5th day. And guess what is the 5th day after April 2nd? April 7th, opening day at Target Field against the Mariners. That is exactly the 10th day. We haven't heard about an injury. Not saying he's not injured. We just haven't heard about it. But throwing in a minor league game tomorrow, tracks him for a start on April 2nd, and then opening day on April 7th. So hopefully that is good news, and he'll be ready to go. And that's exactly 10 days. Tom says, if the season started tomorrow, which fringe guys make the roster? Josh Winder, Yohan Duran, Jose Miranda, Nick Gordon. I think those are, we're talking about that in terms of fringe. I think now Rooker with the shoulder strain is probably on the outside looking in. Could see Kyle Garlick making it again. Could see that. Jose Miranda is the wild card position player in my mind. Does he make the opening day roster? We've seen him come off the bench. He started some games, but not with the regulars. And even if he was on the Twins to start the season, you wouldn't see him with the regulars very much. If everybody's healthy against a right-handed pitcher, Jose Miranda is not in the lineup in that case. by trading away Donaldson and Garver, bringing back Urshela and Sanchez, it doesn't change a whole lot of the landscape. But I think the biggest thing is that Urshela is less entrenched at third base than Donaldson was, because Donaldson couldn't really play anywhere else except for DH. Urshela can probably play a little short when Correa gets a day off. Maybe Urshela will DH, but he's easier to move off third. And Ted said that last week. I agree with Ted. He's easier to move off third than Donaldson was, given the salary and given just kind of the standing at that point. So I think Jose Miranda is the wild card position player. Josh Winder, Yohan Duran on the pitching front. I think both of them make it because there are 28 spots on opening day for the first month. So I think Josh Winder and Yohan Duran both make the opening day roster. And at this point, I'll put Nick Gordon on the opening day roster. We'll talk about Nick a little bit, either today or Wednesday. But Jose Miranda, to me, is the wild card. Does he make it as a platoon option off the bench? People forget Jose Miranda destroyed left-handed pitching in the minors last year. Like, destroyed left-handed pitching. So I wonder if that's his role early on. Is that a good thing for him to be in a platoon role right out of the gate? I think that's where we're trending, given where the roster's at right now. And I think if that's the case and Miranda comes up and he can hit lefties in the majors right away, which I think is certainly possible, this lineup is going to crush left-handed pitching. And we're going to get to roster or opening day projections. Katie asked about that. Thank you, Katie. We'll get to that a little bit later on. First, I want to tell you about BetOnline. After months of playing, college basketball has determined the top teams for the Final Four. Duke and North Carolina meeting on the one side, Villanova and Kansas on the other. National champion is coming next week. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, you name it, BetOnline has you covered. It remains the best spot for all your sports developments, including podcasts and reviews for all the leagues this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. Listen to Lindsey Crosby over at Locked On MLB Prospects. He is outstanding. Back to your questions, Jake. Most combined doubles, triples, homers, RBI, stolen bases between Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa this year. Oh, man. I'm going to take Buxton because Correa doesn't steal bases. Correa, I would say, is a more complete hitter, lower strikeout rate, going to walk more than Buxton, goes to all three fields. Buxton doesn't really do that. However, in terms of raw power, I think Byron Buxton at this point has more than Carlos Correa. I think it's more likely Buxton hits more homers, steals more bases, and hit, more triples. I think it's more likely that Correa drives in runs this year and doubles, because runs are also a counting stat. And I think it's possible that Correa could play in more games than Buxton potentially this year. Hopefully not. Hopefully they're very similar together. But I will take Buxton because of the criteria. If you had said hits, like you included hits in that too, maybe I'd change. Maybe Correa has more hits for a higher average than Buxton potentially. But, man, that's a great question. And I'll go with Buxton because I think a healthy season of Buxton still at this point will be tough to match for anybody. That's how high I am on Byron Buxton, knowing how good Carlos Correa is and has been as well. Derek and Mark, a lot of people are referring, why is there no rush to get another top-end starting pitcher? Pretty soon it'll be time for Seattle on opening day. And, yeah, I think they misplayed the market. I agree. Matthew Trueblood tweeted about this. Our friend Matthew, we've had on the show multiple times, tweeted about this and thinks they misplayed the market. And I think I agree. I think they undersold how many teams might be after these starters, how many teams need starters right now, and what that creates is leverage for the A's with Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea, creates leverage for the Reds with Luis Castillo or Tyler Mahle. It creates that leverage, which takes the Twins out of it basically at that point, because the price just gets so high. They're not willing to pay that premium at this time. We don't know what that premium is, but they're clearly not willing to pay it, or those teams are not willing to move those guys at this point in time. Cueto's possible for depth, but the days are running short. I talk about this on tomorrow's episode, and we'll get into why the Twins are doing this and whether I think it's a good thing. I'll tell you right now, it looks thin, clearly. They needed another frontline starter. They have not filled it, and it doesn't look like they will, which sucks, and it is a misplay. And as great as the Correa signing was, as great as the Sonny Gray trade was, you didn't really check all the boxes if you don't go get another frontline starter or any starter at that point. But I would argue that I'd rather have a frontline starter or nothing than a frontline starter and someone like Johnny Cueto, because you don't want innings just for innings. You want quality innings. And I think last year they chose innings with J-Happ and Matt Shoemaker and didn't really account for the quality aspect of that. Seth said, how's the bullpen looking? We're going to have an episode breaking that down this week, I believe, later this week, but it's really not as bad as it may seem. And I do get into this. I'll get into this a little bit tomorrow. It's not as bad as it seems. I think it has a chance to be good. And the Twins have had a good bullpen for a majority of the last 3 years, as crazy as that sounds. So I think it can be better than it might look on paper. And that's sometimes the case with good bullpens. They're better than they look on paper. Andy, does Buxton finally put it all together for a healthy season? I hope. That makes me happy to think about Byron Buxton putting it together for a full season and staying healthy. I really, really hope with all my heart that happens. Jay, Nick Gordon seems to be on a defensive plateau. Does he have a ceiling, and has he reached it? Will having Correa help him and Royce Lewis? I think it's possible and probably, and certainly I think probable that Carlos Correa will help Royce Lewis and Nick Gordon. And you can't say that for everybody, because not everybody's the defender that Carlos Correa is. Correa is a truly elite defender. The Twins have had one player save more than 20 runs since Fangraphs started counting defensive runs saved, and it was Byron Buxton in 2017, and we know how he's thought of defensively. That's how good Correa is. So absolutely, he's a leader. He can help Royce Lewis. He can help Nick Gordon. The thing with Nick Gordon is he needs to get better at one thing, whether that's getting on base more, drawing more walks, a little bit more pop, better defensively at short and center and in the outfield or wherever. Just a little bit better somewhere, I think, would turn him into a legitimate utility man. At this point, he's just lacking. He's lacking something. He needs just one more thing. I think he has a nice set of tools at this point in terms of he can play center field. We learned that last year. May not be great, but he's not a butcher out there. He can get on base a little bit. He can hit for some power, but he needs to do something a little bit more for me to think about him as like a true quality utility man in the major leagues. I love his buzz. I think he's an asset for the team, certainly. Helps the team and has hit really well in big spots in his short time, and that even bleeds into spring training. But he's got to get better at one more thing. Noah, which prospect not named are Austin Martin or Royce Lewis are you most excited to follow this year? Really tough, because this is what I live for, man. I live for it. Prospect Fridays are coming back. I hope you're ready for Prospect Fridays. Can't wait. There are many. Yoander on for sure, because that's that overlap of he's a prospect, but I think you're going to see him a lot for the Twins. Matt Canarino, does he stay healthy? What does he do? Last year was so good when he was healthy. Emmanuel Rodriguez, I think, has a chance to be their number one prospect soon. He's 18, 19, but huge power, big-time debut last year in the outfield for the Twins, and I think has a chance to really skyrocket this year. So I'll be watching Emmanuel. Spencer Steer, underrated, continues to be underrated. I think with his power strides last year, similar to Jose Miranda's, I think Steer could have a season we're paying attention to on a daily basis. I really do. I think Spencer Steer's underrated. Utility, play second, play third, doesn't want to put himself in a box anywhere, but did unlock power last year, already had a high average, already got on base, unlocked power, gave up a little bit in strikeouts, but I think he can put it all together. Do Keone Cavaco and Aaron Sabato bounce back, the first-round picks from 2019 and 2020? There's two more we'll be watching, certainly. So I'm excited about all those guys, excited to see the storylines this year in the minor leagues. Let's get to my opening day lineups and more after this word from Built Bar. This is the time of year I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting flavors. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite. Some incredible flavors, yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, all so good. Plus, you can go to Built.com right now. Use promo code LOCKED15. That's promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Built Bars are delicious. Built Bars are healthy. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. Katie, lineup against lefties and righties. Against righties, keep up with me. Luis Ariz, Byron Buxton, Jorge Polanco, Carlos Correa, Alex Kirilloff, Gio Urshela, Max Kepler, Miguel Sano, and one of Gary Sanchez or Ryan Jeffers catching. You have Arise at DH, Buxton center, Polanco at second, Correa at short, Kirilloff in left, Urshela at third, Kepler in right, Sano at first, Sanchez, Jeffers catching. That's against the righties. Nice little alternation, as we know Rocco Baldelli likes to do. Against lefties, Buxton leading off, as he has this spring a lot. Polo hitting second, playing second. Carlos Correa third, playing short. Miguel Sano cleaning up, playing first. Alex Kirilloff in left, batting fifth in both lineups. Gio Urshela batting sixth, playing third in both lineups, but I could see Miranda in that spot. Gary Sanchez DHing, Max Kepler in right field, Ryan Jeffers at catcher. So the big difference here is that Sanchez is in at DH for Arise. Arise is on the bench against lefties, and Sanchez is DHing, Jeffers is catching. I think you're going to see both of them in the same lineup a lot against lefties this year. I think that was the plan for Mitch Garver, and I think it's going to be the plan for Sanchez and Jeffers to a similar degree. Jordan, if you had to pick one of the Twins' top 4 prospects in a package for Frankie Montas, which one is going? It's tough because if we're assuming that other teams value these players like prospects lists value these players, and they value Austin Martin more than Royce Lewis and Jose Miranda, it's a different conversation. If you're seeing these guys as pretty much equal from a player or from a team perspective, that's a different conversation as well. But if teams see Austin Martin and Jose Miranda as equal because Miranda may be closer to the majors, ready to go, had a big year, then I'm keeping Martin. If they see Martin as a far and away much better prospect and like him and a throw-in prospect will get it done, maybe I'm doing that. But the Twins have to see it through with Lewis, in my opinion. That's the overarching theme. I think they've invested a lot into him. And in my opinion, I think that they should see it through with him for better or worse. So Martin and Miranda, between those two, depending how a team values them, if they value Martin a whole lot, then it's probably him. If they see them as equal, it's probably Miranda. Balazovic's probably untouchable to me. He has the best chance of becoming a frontline starter for them and has the highest floor among those who could become a frontline starter. Andrew, how would this season be any different for the Twins in the postseason? I like this question a lot. He's saying pitching depth, that's what's killed us. Let's say the Twins go on a great run this year and they make the playoffs, which I think is possible. Would like to see pitchers throw more than 100 pitches a game as well, he says. Yeah, that's a good question. What would be different? The trade deadline would have to be different. And I think they've learned, and I hope they've learned from prior trade deadlines, that they need to go get another starter before the playoffs. That's why I think it would be different. And Carlos Correa, who's played in 79 postseason games, that's more than the Twins have in their franchise history. Going back to the Senators days, he has 82 postseason hits. Kirby Puckett is the Twins leader with 30. Carlos Correa's been there, done that a lot. So I would hope that he would make a difference. I know we said the same about Donaldson, not even in the same stratosphere in terms of not only games played in the playoffs, but also production in the playoffs. Zab. Why wouldn't the Twins lock up Correa for 7 to 10 years, assuming he plays well with no injury? If Correa is looking for a long-term deal with a competitive team, wouldn't this be a great fit for all? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know about you. Maybe I said this about Donaldson. Maybe I was forcing it a little bit at the time. It feels like Correa fits this team like a glove. Does it not? I mean, just seeing how he talks about the team, and maybe what's he going to say if he doesn't like him? Is he going to say he doesn't like him? There seems to be a genuine excitement and a genuine buzz from not only him, but the rest of the guys. I think there's also the factor of this team still, at its core, a lot of Latin players, especially now. Gary Sanchez, Gio Urshela, Miguel Sano, Jorge Polanco. I'm missing a ton. Jose Miranda is coming from Puerto Rico. Carlos Correa from Puerto Rico has that connection to those guys, has the connection to Miguel Sano, has the connection to Jorge Polanco, obviously has the connection to Byron Buxton, drafted in the same year, 1 and 2. They know each other. They've known each other for a long time. So in terms of relationships, I think it's there for him. Jim Pohlad reportedly loves Carlos Correa. I think Carlos Correa fits this team wonderfully. We've never seen him step up and offer a deal that Correa would demand, right? 8 years, $225 million with escalators to get it to $275. Would that do it? Probably not. He's going to be coming off hopefully a great year with the Twins, going into his age 28 season at that point. He's going to be looking for $300 million. And I don't know if the Twins are ever going to step up and pay $300 million to a free agent. Carlos Correa at that point, if he has a great year and the Twins are successful and he fits like it looks like he's going to fit, I'll be disappointed, but let's let the ink dry. I've said it. Enjoy Carlos Correa. It's most likely he's leaving, but I agree with you that it makes a ton of sense to lock him up. There's no long-term option at shortstop. a lot of teams have their shortstop or have a lot of money invested in shortstop. So I think his market is smaller. Look what happened this offseason. Smaller market. I think many teams are not willing to pay Carlos Correa what he could demand. So it's an opportunity for the Twins, but we'll believe that when we see it in terms of even an offer that exceeds the 92 or 100 million that they offered Zach Wheeler, reportedly around 100 million for Yu Darvish or whatever. We'll believe it when we see it. We'll believe it when we see it. Thank you so much for all your questions. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. You'll make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Again, part 2, if you asked a question that hasn't been answered, I will get to it in part 2 most likely. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day and go Twins.